The NBA released its schedule, and you can already see a trend with what is going to happen with the Utah Jazz this year. Let's take a look at it. All right, guys, when I look at this schedule, and after just kind of analyzing all the different games, the most important thing to me was how this Utah Jazz team was going to start, and it's going to be interesting. I'm not going to dive into preseason because obviously that doesn't count towards the schedule, and the most important thing for this Utah Jazz team is how many games they win or lose to start the season, and just based off of what we're seeing, the Jazz are probably not going to win many games. When you look at the first 20 or so games from Memphis through Sacramento up until the in-season tournament, the only team that I see that is a team that the Jazz can potentially beat, unless there's injuries or things like that, is the San Antonio Spurs. I've had some people tell me online, like, oh, the Jazz could probably get a win against Memphis. And let me tell you, that is the return of Ja Morant, unless something weird happens again this offseason. But that's Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. That team is going to be good. That is not a win anymore for the Jazz. The Memphis Grizzlies are going to be good this year, especially with all that young talent and depth. They're going to be nice. And so when you look at this Jazz team, from Memphis to Sacramento, and by the way, some of these games are on the back end of a back-to-back where they are likely going to rest Lauri Markkanen. And I would not be surprised if the Jazz are tanking like a lot of us predict they're going to do. You're going to probably see Lauri Markkanen rest on these San Antonio games. I don't think Lauri Markkanen is going to be the Iron Man of the season this year. They're going to rest him here and there. And you can bet they are likely going to rest him on the games they'd like to lose that they would otherwise have a chance to win, and that includes San Antonio. So you could look, and I went through every single of these games from Memphis through Sacramento, and I only see two, and those two wins are against San Antonio if the Jazz find a way to win those games. The other thing that's interesting about this schedule is that the Utah Jazz only play other tanking teams. If you don't count San Antonio, and I think San Antonio is a gray area because I think there is a chance that San Antonio does try to tank again this year, but they went out and traded for Harrison Barnes. That's more depth around Victor Wembanyama. They have Stephon Castle now running point, who's going to be at the very least a very good defender and distributor. That team is not going to be very bad. The San Antonio Spurs are going to be better than the Jazz, especially with what Wembanyama was doing by the end of last season. And Wembanyama might be all NBA this year. And so anyways, not counting San Antonio, the NBA trade deadline this season is February 6th. Utah plays 6 of those bad Eastern teams as well as Portland. So they play Detroit, Brooklyn, Portland, Brooklyn, Charlotte, Washington. That's 6 games against tanking teams until February 6th, the trade deadline. The regular season starts October 23rd. So that means through February 6th, the end of October, November, December, January, and then the beginning of February, that's like 4 months, give or take. The Jazz will only play 6 tanking teams. So this Utah Jazz team could go, at best, like the most generous, you could say, they're going into trade deadline with somewhere between 6 to 10 wins at most. There's just no way I see the Jazz winning more than 10 games. Now, Will Hardy could just be a wizard, and he could just turn this team into something else. Maybe Jordan Clarkson somehow transforms into something else, and Colin Sexton has an all-NBA season. Those are the kind of things that would have to happen to get the Jazz to win 10 or more games, but even that seems unrealistic to me. So they go into trade deadline and obviously this season, because of how Lauri Markkanen signed his contract, they can't trade Lauri Markkanen. That might have been a possibility this year for sure had they not done that. But you can bet there are going to be teams that are going to call the Jazz about Colin Sexton, and the Jazz probably know that. This season is going to be a tanking season. There's not really a lot the Jazz can do to win more of these games. They've set this team up in a really good way. You guys all know that I was more in the camp of trading Lauri Markkanen because I don't want those wins. I do not want those random wins against like the San Antonio Spurs on a Tuesday because the Jazz didn't trade their vets. Well, the way this schedule is set up, the Jazz can absolutely play their young guys, lose these games, let the young guys develop, and go into trade deadline, trade Colin Sexton, trade Jordan Clarkson to anyone who wants them so that they can continue to play these young players. Utah is set up in a perfect way. The question is, can they commit to just playing the young players? Because that's more important. This season is going to rack up a lot of losses, and it's very easy to see this Jazz team. I was worried, but the way this schedule is set up, I'm pretty excited. Utah goes into trade deadline with probably 6 wins total and a lot of losses, and being set up to go in to the trade deadline to trade those vets so that they go into the lottery with the best possible chances, with that 14% shot, but not just the 14% shot. By the way, for all of you that want to make comments about the 14%, and that's what everyone's rooting for, no, it's 14% plus placement. Okay? That has to be the caveat. If Utah can go into the lottery with the worst record or somewhere in the 1, 2, or 3, that is the ideal spot. Why is that? Yes, you get the 14% chance for the number 1 pick, but you do have a much higher shot at getting a top 4 pick when the lottery balls fall. And let's say you don't even get a lottery ball. If you're at the, let's say you're the second worst team and you get dropped and you just have the worst luck ever and you drop 4 or 5 spots. Everyone likes to mention Detroit. They don't like to mention that the San Antonio Spurs were the number 2 team that won Victor Wembanyama, but they do like to mention the other. So anyways, you go into that spot, even if you get jumped by a couple teams, guess what? You fall from 2, you go to 4, and you get VJ Edgecombe. And by the way, there were people online that went to the overtime elite scrimmage that saw VJ Edgecombe. He's looking like the number 3. He's looking awesome. So guess what? Your worst case is like Dylan Harper, Nolan Traore from France, all these incredible players. You're going to get the best possible pick. And guess what? You put yourself in that 14% shot, you get Cooper Flagg. All of a sudden, if this works out the way the Jazz want it to, you've got Cooper Flagg, you've got Lauri Markkanen, you've got Keontae George, Taylor Hendricks, all these players, Cody Williams, all these players with time under their belt, experience playing the game, and you can go out and either tank in 26 some free agency moves, right? It certainly seems like the Jazz are set up to succeed in the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes. Capture the flag, hashtag capture the flag. Guys, if you'd like to support the channel, hit join below. I really appreciate it. If you'd like to subscribe and like, I would appreciate that as well. If you're a Jazz fan and you haven't already, I wish you would. By the way, guys, you look at this schedule, we got games on October 4th, preseason games, 6 weeks. And the post-game shows are coming back, baby. We're coming. It's going to happen. I'll talk to you next time.